Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Donald Trump's first criminal trial for allegedly paying hush money to an adult film star to cover up their relationship is scheduled to begin at 9:30 a.m. in Manhattan this coming Monday morning. I say scheduled because, well, it's taken some years to get to this point, hasn't it? The money was paid to Stormy Daniels back in the fall of 2016, right before the election. Now, nearly 8 years later, Trump might actually be held accountable for his misdeeds. There's an old social media meme. I'd like to see old Donnie Trump wriggle his way out of this jam. And then, of course, he wriggles out of it. Ah, well, nevertheless. That meme itself is almost 8 years old. And 8 years later, Trump is still wriggling, though not with as much success as he used to have. 3 times this week, his lawyers asked the courts to delay the start of this trial. On Monday, a judge said no. On Tuesday, another judge said no. On Wednesday, yet another judge said no. Today, in the clearest sign this might actually be happening, NBC News obtained a list of potential trial witnesses for the prosecution. It is sure to give the former president some agita. The list includes Stormy Daniels, of course, the adult film actress who alleges that she slept with Trump in 2006 during a golf tournament while Melania was home with their newborn son, Barron, and says she was paid off to stay quiet about the affair just weeks before the 2016 election.
My friend was like, you might actually have a problem. I don't want to scare you, but based on the things you've told me, now you're the whole Republican Party's problem. And they like to make their problems go away.
We could also hear from Karen McDougal, a former Playboy playmate who also alleges an affair with Donald Trump and alleges she was also paid off in that same period in 2016.
Why do you think it was that it was after Donald Trump was the Republican nominee that they came back?
They wanted to squash the story.
Both of their payoffs were negotiated by celebrity lawyer Keith Davidson. He says he's already turned over 1,500 pages of evidence to federal investigators, and he could also testify, a source of knowledge tells NBC News. As could Dylan Howard, that's the former editor-in-chief of the National Enquirer, and more importantly, really, his boss, that would be American Media CEO David Pecker, that gentleman there on the right of your screen. They reportedly acted as Trump's eyes and ears for negative stories, including the allegations by Daniels and McDougal. They paid McDougal a 6-figure sum for the rights to her story so they could quietly bury it, the so-called catch-and-kill tactic. There's also Hope Hicks, that's the Trump campaign and White House aide, who participated in phone calls with Trump and Cohen around the time of the Stormy Daniels payoff. She could testify, along with several other Trump Organization and White House officials. The star witness, of course, may be Trump's one-time fixture, Michael Cohen. He's the lawyer who has already pleaded guilty and done jail time for his role in this case, for what he did. He says he was the guy who set up the whole hush money operation at Trump's request, using his own money. He's champing at the bit to testify against Trump, as he told Jen Psaki last month.
Yeah, he should be worried about me. He should be worried about the Manhattan District Attorney, the District Attorney of New York prosecutors. He should be worried about the documentary evidence. He should be worried about all of the witnesses that are going to be coming in to that trial, simply because, as others have also appropriately put it, this is a very simple case.
And if you're wondering what the evidence Michael Cohen is talking about, what he could possibly testify about, well, we know. Actually, he laid it out in simple terms under oath before the House Oversight Committee way back in 2019.
Picture this scene. In February of 2017, 1 month into his presidency, I'm visiting President Trump in the Oval Office for the first time, and it's truly awe-inspiring. He's showing me all around and pointing to different paintings. And he says to me something to the effect of, "Don't worry, Michael, your January and February reimbursement checks are coming." They were FedExed from New York, and it takes a while for that to get through the White House system. As he promised, I received the first check for the reimbursement of $70,000 not long thereafter. The President of the United States thus wrote a personal check for the payment of hush money as part of a criminal scheme to violate campaign finance laws.
As Cohen said, it is a simple case. Donald Trump wanted to be president. He wanted to bury negative stories that might endanger his campaign, and he sought the help of a consigliere who is now ready to testify against him. Again, in a trial that, we'll see, finally begins on Monday. It has been almost 2 years since the Supreme Court erased the constitutional right to an abortion. That decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health turned back the clock nearly half a century. And in fact, history itself was the reason the majority of the court gave for taking away American women's reproductive freedom. In the majority opinion, conservative Justice Samuel Alito writes, quote, "The Constitution makes no reference to abortion. No such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. That provision has been held to guarantee some rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution, but any such right must be deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition. The right to abortion does not fall within this category. Until the latter part of the 20th century, such a right was entirely unknown in American law." Basically, according to Samuel Alito and the conservative majority, and the logic of Dobbs, the whole holding, abortion and other rights cannot be a constitutional right because it is not found deep in the tradition and history of our nation. Now, a lot of people responded to that decision by saying that basing our 21st century constitutional rights and the implications of the plain text and the jurisprudence that follows from it on what we were or were not doing hundreds of years ago is itself a completely ludicrous methodology, dangerous, reactionary. And of course, the reality is that the history and tradition of this country is patriarchy and white supremacy. And so the methodology adopted by that man, Samuel Alito, on the right, what the conservative Supreme Court effectively ruled, is that we are going to let the past dictate the present in this really binding way. Specifically, the white men who held power in the distant past, the men who made up the tradition of our history. And that is exactly what we are seeing in Arizona. It's not an accident. This isn't some weird fluke. It's the logic of Dobbs at play, where that state Supreme Court just revived a near total abortion ban from 1864, from when Lincoln was president. This is the code of laws adopted by the very first Arizona territorial legislature 160 years ago. Yes, territorial, because Arizona would not become a state for nearly 50 more years. Named for judge and principal author William Thompson Howell, the man you see there on the left, the Howell Code formalized the laws governing all the territory, population less than 10,000. Now, the code established crimes such as excusable homicide by misadventure, which could include, quote, a man at work with an axe and the head flies off and kills a bystander, or where a parent is moderately correcting his child and happens to occasion death. It contains multiple sections relating to duels, for example, setting a punishment of 1 to 3 years imprisonment for any person who shall willingly and knowingly carry or deliver any written challenge or shall be present at the fighting of any duel. The Howell Code also defines the crime of rape as, quote, and listen closely here, a person of the age 14 years and upward who shall have carnal knowledge of any female child under the age of 10 years, either with or without her consent. So 10 was the cutoff for consent. And it also addresses abortion, ruling it is a crime to administer or cause to be administered or taken any medicinal substances or use or cause to be used any instruments whatever with the intention to procure the miscarriage of any woman then being with child. That part is now going to be the law of the land in Arizona once again. Now, of course, this was not only William Thompson Howell's doing. These laws were the project of the entire Arizona territorial government, including, crucially, the man running the state legislature, the territory legislature, the Speaker of the House, a man by the name of William Claude Jones. A 1990 biographical article describes Jones as, and I quote here, a prevaricator, a poet, a politician, a pursuer of nubile females, a member of a royal privy council, a speaker of Spanish, a proponent of Southern secession, a partisan of the Union, and probably the man who named Arizona. But really, I think the most salient way to describe him is as a serial child rapist. In the 1850s, Jones won a federal appointment as United States Attorney for New Mexico Territory, then encompassing what is now Arizona, leaving behind his then wife and 2 children in Missouri. A few years later, Jones' wife obtained a divorce, and he married a very young Mexican girl. New Mexico's delegate in Washington declared the bride was 12 years old and that Jones had, quote, abducted her. The delegate asked the President of the United States, President Buchanan, to fire Jones for the moral lapse. That would be the kidnapping and raping of a 12-year-old. Jones had anticipated the charge and wrote in with his resignation. That quote-unquote marriage to the 12-year-old he abducted lasted just 2 years. Then in 1864, made his way to Arizona, and he was elected Speaker of the House in the brand new Arizona Territorial Legislature, the one where he shepherded the passage of this law. 3 days after the end of the legislative session, where the Howell Code was approved, a big day for Jones. He married a woman named Caroline E. Stevens after a whirlwind courtship. Women, of course, being a little questionable. She was 15 years old. He was approximately 50. Less than 6 months later, he left his child bride, pictured here with her second husband, who never saw or heard from him again. Jones promptly left for California, followed by Hawaii. In February of 1868, he won election to the Kingdom of Hawaii's lower house. A 14-year-old girl named May May, reportedly a princess from a noble family, was pregnant with his child at the time of the election. They went on to have several children before May May died at age 28. Jones married his fifth and final wife just 4 months later, named Mary, age unknown. He filed for divorce in 1883, charging Mary with numerous flagrant acts of adultery, and he died within 6 months. William Claude Jones spent his life wielding his power over women and over girls and their bodies with complete tyrannical domination. He faced no consequences, except he once lost a job for the 12-year-old he abducted and raped. And that is exactly the kind of history and tradition that Samuel Alito and the Supreme Court have brought back to the 21st century. It is not an accident or a historical gotcha. It is the very logic of this court. It is the point of their decision in Dobbs. It is the point of the Arizona Supreme Court's ruling this week. In the year 2024, William Claude Jones once again gets to control the body of women and girls in the state of Arizona.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.